All right, we're here. Today is April 7th, 2022, and I just went and saw, willingly, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in theaters. There weren't any early screenings around me, so I couldn't get to any of those, but never late... Better late than never is what I always say, if I could actually say it properly. And if you think that this thing where I mix up my words is a bit, you are horribly mistaken. So before we really get into Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I guess it's important to talk about how I felt about Sonic the Hedgehog 1, as I saw it on Valentine's Day with my ex-girlfriend, and both of us thought it was very bad. It was very boring, it was very formulaic, and there wasn't really any inspiration with anything going on. It didn't even really seem like a Sonic movie, it just seemed like a children's movie that had the Sonic label on it. And if there is one positive that I can give this film, it is the fact that this seems like a Sonic movie. There's way more action to it. There's way more gotta go fast. He even says it, which is awesome. And the additions of Tails and Knuckles and the lore of the Chaos Emeralds and the Diamond, there's more of a Sonic base there to work up from. And I think actual fans of the franchise, which is not me, I do not care in the slightest, but I can commend them working to go in the right direction. And if I was to commend anything else in the film, it would be the fact that it just seemed more. There was more action, there were more pop culture references, things were happening at a faster rate, there was a lot more action as opposed to bonding moments between James Marsden and Sonic, which were so insanely boring. And I get that they kind of had to do that in order to set up the origin story, but it seemed like they were like, no funny business this time. We're just gonna go more laughs. Laughs are obviously in quotation marks. We'll get to that later. But it seemed like this was more dense with things that would be considered fun by most people that aren't cynical dipwads. The problem with that is that I am a cynical dipwad, so I'm gonna give it to you straight as I see it, unfortunately, whether you like that or not. A lot of people in the Letterboxd community who had went to early screenings of this made it seem like this was a giant leap over the first Sonic. It was more absurdist, it was crazier and crazier, and it just kept chugging along, and there was so much more to like. What did you watch? Did you watch the same movie I did? Because I did not get that at all. What are you talking about? This is like the same thing. It's just like the next step of progression. The first one did well, so they made a second one with like a bigger budget. But everything else is the same. The stupid pop culture jokes, the flossing is still the same. The forced, like, weird family moral messages, even though I said that they're not as prominent, they're still there and very, very, very pointless. There's a bunch of side characters that don't get their arcs fulfilled or, like, hastily rushed to be filled. It's the same as the first movie, but there's just more things going on to distract you from the fact that it's just very, very, very subpar. Speaking of subpar and consistent throughout the franchise, let's talk about Jim Carrey as Mr. Eggman. He was awful in the first movie, and it was funny because the person I was doing a podcast with at the time was like, dude, Jim Carrey was the best part of Sonic the Hedgehog, and I don't understand how you can really think that. Jim Carrey is a great physical actor, but in order for his physical acting to be highlighted, there genuinely needs to be some good written jokes in there as the baseline to build the physical comedy off of. And if he doesn't have that, then the physical comedy is useless. What was your favorite part of Jim Carrey's physical performance of this film? Was it the point where he does the floss in front of Knuckles? Or is it the weird, wacky motions he makes in order to move his giant robot? But that gets us into a different problem with the movie and this whole series of films, even though there's only been 2 of them, and that's the writing of the films. Do you want to know the most prominent films that the writers have done before this series? National Lampoon's Dorm Days and National Lampoon's Dorm Days 2. Wow! Let us use the duo of Josh Miller and Patrick Casey, who have only done raunchy sex comedy before, to make family film about nostalgic video game property. Because that is sure to work out completely well and not seem forced and over the top. I guess a positive that I can give this is Idris Elba, and it's mostly because Idris Elba is good in everything. But also, I really don't know the Sonic franchise at all, so when people were saying that Idris Elba would be a great Knuckles when they first saw the trailer, I was like, okay, sure. But then I watched the movie, and they're right. Idris Elba is the best person that could have possibly played Knuckles out of the big name stars that you could have gotten. So that was actually a really great choice. Another positive that I will touch on is Lee Majdoub as Agent Stone, the kind of minion guy that is endlessly in love with Jim Carrey's Professor Eggman. I think that's an interesting little connection that the 2 of them have, or at least his pining is one of the only genuine funny parts of the film. And I also think it's kind of cool to have gay representation on screen. That's pretty nifty. And also, he just has a good performance in general, regardless of all of his storyline. I think he's actually pretty good. And hey, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, if you want to make him the main villain, that would be pretty nifty to me. I guess another thing that I can give this film as a positive is the action is genuinely a step up from its predecessor. I think that the teamwork scenes between Tails and Sonic, and the fact that it's going and going, and it never gets boring. The action doesn't get boring. It doesn't ever get monotonous, which it definitely seemed like it did in the first movie. There is constant shifts in environment. There's constant shifts in tones of the battles, whether they're comedic or dramatic. I think that's a really cool way to take the Sonic franchise, especially considering that's kind of how the video games are also. Sometimes the levels are more upbeat, sometimes the levels are not more upbeat. It felt like this was, again, more accurate to the original games than the first one. Ultimately, is it true that the movie is better than the first one? By all technicalities, yes. But are we perhaps overblowing the level of which it's better than the first one because of how bad the first one is and how good we want the Sonic franchise to be? 1,000,000%. There's absolutely no way that this is an above average film, and anyone who thinks so is a respected individual that is allowed to have their own opinion, because we don't criticize others on the internet. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a fun time to an extent, but it's also painfully annoying and painfully subpar to someone who saw all of these positive reviews and thought that they were getting a genuinely decent video game film for one of the first times ever, and instead ended up with not that. I'm going to give Sonic the Hedgehog 2 a 4 out of 10. Once again, I give the first one a 2 out of 10. I'm giving this one a 4. It is a step up from the first one. And if they continue making these steps up in the further entries, maybe they'll eventually get to a 10 on the 5th one. Who knows? The possibilities are endless. That's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I know I lied and I said that the 2018 video was coming next, but it's actually coming next this time on Monday. So look out for that. I will talk to you guys next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.